Hey guys, and welcome to another NIKKE character guide. In today's video, we will be taking a look at Coco, who is the newest SSR character, and she is also the first NIKKE who can cleanse debuffs for your team. Coco is a burst 1 support that focuses on cleansing debuffs, applying debuffs on your enemies, as well as increasing her own survivability, making her a very useful burst 1 support in the right stages. We will be covering everything you need to know about Coco in regards to how you can properly use her in your teams, and the best scenarios where you can get the most value out of her kit. With that being said, if you find this video useful, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe as it really helps out the channel. Also feel free to check out my links in the description below if you're interested, and without further delay, let's jump right in. Starting things off, let's take a look at Coco's abilities and explain to you how they actually work. Her skill 1, Professional Origami, is an active skill that activates every 15 seconds. At level 10, this ability recovers 17.76% of the cover's HP, which is the blue bar on top of the character's HP, and this effect will apply to all of your allies' covers. The skill description on this ability is actually mistranslated, so regardless of what the in-game description says, Coco's skill 1 will only recover your team's cover HP, not the character's HP. The second part of Coco's skill 1 will randomly select 2 of your allies with a debuff, and it will get rid of 1 debuff from the selected allies, which means that this ability can also get your characters out of stun. With that said, it's not by any means a reliable way of doing so because you can't properly time this ability. Looking at this, Coco's skill 1 is very similar to Litter's skill 2, but Coco's skill 1 has a lower cover HP recovery and it also affects more units. So this can be better for stages when the enemy attacks multiple members in your team consistently, but you will need quite a bit of investment to really see a big difference from the cover HP recovery. Moving on, we have our skill 2, Professional Tomato Sauce. This one is a passive skill that activates when Coco does a fully charged attack. Coco's skill 2 grants her a stack of Professional Tomato Sauce that decreases her damage taken by 4.37% at level 10, and this can stack up to 15 times with the 5-second duration on the stack. The damage reduction from this ability is pretty good, but in most cases, you still need to have a healer in your team so that you can comfortably survive. And lastly, we have her burst, Professional Maid Leader. This burst is on a 20-second cooldown just like most burst 1 units, and this will simply remove 1 debuff from all of your allies. But if you have all 15 stacks from Coco's skill 2, this will also decrease all of your enemies' attack by 13.59% at level 10. This ability is great for when you're up against enemies with a high rate of debuff application. The attack reduction is nice, but it's not really the most impactful debuff, especially if you don't invest quite a bit in upgrading her burst. When it comes to her upgrade priorities, her skill 1 is pretty much the only one that needs upgrades. I would say that you can keep all of her skills at level 4 if you don't see yourself using her that often. And if you really like using her, I recommend only upgrading her skill 1 further and leave the other skills at level 4. Before we move on to the next section, I want to quickly go over my recommendations for the Harmony Cube. For characters like Coco, we don't really have cubes for support because most of them increase damage, which is better used for DPS units. So I would say that you can leave her without a cube, or you can use Adjutant or Resilience Cube if you have any of those with vacant slots. Now that you have an idea on how her skills work, let's now go over when and why you should use Coco in your team. We know that Coco focuses on cleansing debuffs and applying a debuff on the enemies, so with that in mind, I do think that she will be very effective in PvP as a second burst 1 unit. There are quite a lot of characters in the game that can apply a ton of debuffs, so her cleanse can be very useful against them. But her burst doesn't really provide much outside of that, so you just have to see for yourself if you really need her cleanse, or are you better off using a buffer like N102 or Litter. Take for example if you are using Emma against a team with Anne Miracle Fairy. Emma is weak against Anne because of the healing reduction, but if you have Coco in your team, you have a better chance of winning because you can get rid of the HP potency debuff really fast. So that's one case where Coco can be a great counter pick. On top of that, PvP is one of the few cases where attack reduction is actually decent. So I can see Coco being a good pick for some PvP teams that are specifically made to counter teams with a lot of debuff application. When it comes to PvE, it's basically the same thing with PvP. Coco only gets a lot of value against enemies with a lot of debuff application, so you will most likely need another burst 1 unit who will mainly use their burst instead of Coco's burst, because you only need to use Coco's burst whenever you need to use the cleanse. With that said, you can technically make a solo burst 1 Coco work, but your other characters need to have a lot of buffs from their kit to compensate for Coco's burst not having that much utility. So in some rare cases, that can actually work. A few examples of when Coco is actually really good in PvE is when you're up against a doctor in the Union raid. The doctor decreases your team's attack by 40% and also decreases your team's HP recovery by 100%. So if you are struggling against this boss, or if you are in the later levels of the raid and you want to deal more damage to it, Coco can be a good pick. Another boss I want to mention is Nihilister. A lot of players are not even close to chapter 20 yet, but if you are someone who is already there and you are struggling against this boss, you can give Coco a shot because she can cleanse the burning effects from Nihilister. When it comes to team compositions, she doesn't really have a specific team because as a support, she naturally fits in a lot of teams. It just depends on the stage if it requires you to have a cleanser. Just keep in mind that you might need to have another burst 1 unit with more utility on their burst so that you can just use Coco's burst whenever you need a cleanse. But more often than not, if you are only planning to use a single burst 1 unit, you are better off using someone else, especially if you don't really need the cleanse from Coco. As of now, I think that Coco is a character made to be a solution for a future problem. Outside of PvP, we don't really have much content that requires a dedicated cleanser like Coco. Maybe with a few exemptions like some bosses in the raid and the campaign. But even then, those enemies were not unbeatable before Coco got released. So if you have a lot of characters in your roster, you can probably figure out a way to beat the content without going for Coco. If you're still wondering if you need to pull for her, I would say that you can maybe do a few 10 pulls to see if you can snipe her, because at the end of the day, she is a very unique support that you might need later down the road. So it's better to have her rather than need her and not have her at all. With that being said, that is pretty much everything you need to know about Coco. She is a pretty straightforward support character that has a very specific use, so if you want to use her in your teams, you can optimally do so using the things I covered in this video. If you have any more questions, or if you think I missed anything, feel free to leave it down in the comments below. And as always, if you found this video useful, don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe, check out my links in the description if you are interested, and with that being said, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.